The desert doesn't whisper, it breathes. And that evening, the dry Arizona air was holding its breath. Ellie Martin, age 8, and full of sunburnt freckles and questions nobody could answer, was wandering where she wasn't supposed to be again. Her sneakers kicked up red dust behind her as she hopped over the broken fence of the abandoned gas station just outside Yuma, her flashlight swinging wildly from her wrist like a comet. Her grandpa had warned her about this place, told her it was nothing but rats and cactus ghosts, told her it was dangerous, dirty, and probably full of snakes. But Ellie had always believed that danger wasn't a wall, it was a door. And something about that night felt like a door was creaking open. She was on her way home from feeding stray cats behind the diner when she heard it. A noise, small, broken. Not a bark exactly, not a growl either. Just something that shouldn't have been there. She froze, stared toward the drainage ditch that ran behind the gas station, its rusty grate warped from old flash floods. The sound came again, barely more than a whisper this time. A whimper. Ellie crouched, her little fingers wrapped tight around the flashlight handle now. The beam caught the edge of the concrete pipe. Inside, half hidden in shadows and tangled weeds, she saw a glint of something metallic. Then it moved. Her breath caught in her throat. A dog, big, bleeding. He was lying on his side, ribs visible beneath a torn K9 vest. One ear half torn, his left leg bent at a strange angle. His eyes glowed yellow for a second in the beam, and then they blinked. He was still alive. "Oh my gosh," she whispered. Hey, it's okay." The dog didn't move. Ellie knelt slowly, crawling toward the pipe. Her knee scraped against a rock, but she barely noticed. She reached into her bag and pulled out her half-full water bottle. Twisting the cap, she poured a little into the palm of her hand. "Here, boy, please, don't be scared." The dog lifted his head a fraction, sniffed. Then, like it took every ounce of strength he had left, he licked the water once, twice, and collapsed again. That was all she needed to see. Ellie made 4 trips back and forth from her grandparents' house that night. Blankets, bandages, leftover chicken, an old headlamp from Grandpa's tackle box. She didn't sleep. She just sat with him, this huge, quiet dog with one paw shaking from fever, watching the desert stars move slowly overhead. She whispered stories to him, gave him a name, Ghost. "I'll hide you," she promised. "No one has to know. You're safe now." By morning, he was breathing steadier, and Ellie knew she had to move him before the world woke up. So she wrapped him in 2 quilts, rolled him onto an old skateboard she found near the dumpster, and pushed. It took nearly an hour to wheel him through back roads and behind the tractor shed, and finally into the hayloft of her grandfather's old barn. She lined a corner with towels, folded jackets, and stuffed animals she didn't mind parting with. Ghost didn't fight. He just rested his head on a pillow shaped like a duck and slept. The next few days passed in slow, quiet miracle. Ellie cleaned his wounds with hydrogen peroxide and baby wipes. She snuck cold cuts and boiled rice from the kitchen and fed him by hand. She even read him her favorite book because of Winn-Dixie, thinking, maybe a dog would like to hear about another dog who'd been found in a grocery store. Each day, Ghost grew stronger. And each day, Ellie fell more in love. But something else happened too. On day 3, while brushing dried blood from his collar, she noticed something she hadn't before: a small plastic casing attached under his tag. It was blinking. Blue, red, blue, red. She pried it loose. Inside was a micro SD card. Ellie didn't know what that meant exactly, but she knew who would. Her cousin Liam was 12 and obsessed with computers. He once hacked their school's online lunch menu just to swap Tuesday's chili with popcorn shrimp. That night, after her grandparents fell asleep, she crept into Liam's room. He frowned when she held out the card. "Where'd you get this?" "I found it," she said quickly. "In the barn." "You're not supposed to be in the barn. You're not supposed to be watching zombie movies on a school night." Touché. He inserted the card into his Chromebook. At first, nothing. Then, static. A few skips, a flash of movement, and then it played. Helmet cam footage, people yelling. Flashing red lights, gunshots. A man's voice, "Get the handler, secure the dog." A scream, and then a face. Brief, bloodied. A young man in uniform collapsing beside a crate. The screen cut out. Liam turned slowly. "Dude, what is this?" Ellie stared. Her mouth was dry. I think Ghost saw something." The next morning, her grandpa mentioned something over eggs and toast. "Sheriff's in town. Came by the mill asking about a missing K9 unit." Ellie's heart stopped. Her grandmother looked up. "A dog." "Yeah, said he might have survived some kind of ambush south of town. Government stuff." Didn't say much more. He shrugged and went back to his coffee. But Ellie couldn't breathe. Ghost wasn't just hurt, he was being hunted. And now, someone else knew he might be alive. Midway call to action seamlessly integrated. If you've ever believed that even the smallest act of kindness could change a life, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more true, powerful stories of courage, healing, and the animals that bring us home. That evening, Ellie returned to the barn with shaking hands and a racing heart. Ghost was sitting up now, his legs still stiff but his eyes alert. She hugged him tight. "I don't know who's after you," she whispered into his fur, "but I'm not letting them take you." Ghost didn't flinch. He just pressed his nose to her shoulder, like he knew. Outside, the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the desert in long golden shadows. And Ellie Martin, 8 years old, hair-tangled, heart too big for her frame, walked out of that barn with her chin high. She wasn't just hiding a dog anymore. She was protecting a secret. And Ghost, he wasn't just recovering, he was remembering. Ghost had been in the barn for 5 days now. To Ellie Martin, those 5 days felt like something out of a movie, like the part before the real danger begins, when the music's soft and nobody knows what's coming. But something was coming. She could feel it. It started with the noise Ghost made on day 6. She just brought him his breakfast, scrambled eggs and peanut butter on a paper plate, and he was sitting upright now, alert, stronger. The swelling in his leg had gone down, and his bandaged ribs rose and fell with steady breaths. But as soon as Ellie reached to check the bandage behind his left ear, his body stiffened. And then he growled. Low, warning, not at her, but toward the barn door. Ellie turned. Nothing there. Just dust in a sunbeam floating lazily. But Ghost didn't stop. He stayed frozen, ears perked, eyes locked on a shadow near the hay bales. Then just as suddenly he relaxed, laid down, exhaled. Ellie was still learning how to read him, but that moment, that was no random growl. Ghost knew something. Later that afternoon, Liam met her behind the shed with a manila folder. "I printed stills from the footage," he whispered, eyes wide. Ellie flipped through them, grainy screenshots of the helmet cam video they'd pulled from Ghost's collar. One image showed men in black uniforms with no visible patches. Another showed a blurry logo, a triangle with a number inside on the side of a black van. Then there was the face, the man in uniform, bloodied, gasping. Liam pointed to the printout. "That guy's real. His name's Officer Tyler James, missing from Phoenix PD. I found a post on a law enforcement forum. Someone's looking for him." Ellie's heart pounded. Ghost hadn't just seen something bad. He'd been part of something bad. Maybe even the only witness left. "So what do we do?" she asked. Liam hesitated. "You tell someone." Ellie looked at him. "And they take Ghost away." Ellie, Dalton. That night, Ellie crept back into the barn just before sunset. She sat beside Ghost, who was now strong enough to walk a few steps and drink water without help. She held up the still photo of Officer Tyler James. Ghost's reaction was instant. He stood staggering slightly and let out a low whine. Then he licked the photo. Ellie blinked. "Was he your person?" Ghost looked up at her. His eyes said yes. Ellie's voice cracked. "Where is he?" The dog turned limp to the barn door and barked once. The next morning, Ellie did something she'd never done before. She skipped school, stuffed her backpack with snacks, water, a flashlight, and the photo of Officer James. Then she clipped a rope leash to Ghost's collar and whispered, "Show me." And he did. They crossed the backfield behind her grandparents' house, slipped through the broken fence near the windmill, and followed the old dried-up canal into the foothills. Ghost moved slowly, favoring his left leg, but he moved with purpose. Every few yards, he sniffed, adjusted, redirected. He knew where he was going. They walked for over an hour until they reached a weathered metal sign that read, "U.S. property, no trespassing." Behind it stood a rusted gate partially open, and beyond that rows of crumbling concrete pillars, what was left of a decommissioned water treatment facility shut down 20 years ago. Ghost barked once, then limped forward. Inside it was cooler. Dust coated everything. Pipes hissed softly from underground pressure. Ellie stepped over fallen beams and shattered glass, holding Ghost's leash tight. That's when she saw it, a badge. It lay half buried under debris beside a torn tactical glove and a bent flashlight. She brushed off the dirt. "Officer Tyler James, K9 Unit, Phoenix PD." Ghost whimpered. Ellie clutched the badge to her chest. This was real. This wasn't a dream or a story. Suddenly, Ghost froze again, just like he had in the barn. He crouched low, body tense, ears flat. Ellie heard it too. Voices male, close. She pulled Ghost behind an overturned barrel and peeked through a crack in the wall. 2 men in civilian clothes were walking across the far corridor, one holding a tablet, the other wearing dark glasses. I'm telling you, they've got new footage. The damn dog's still out there. We need to move what's left, clean the site, get rid of the rest before anyone else finds it. Ellie's blood ran cold. She waited holding her breath as the men passed. Then she and Ghost slipped back the way they came, fast, silent, like shadows themselves. That evening, Ellie burst into Liam's room. You were right. She showed him the badge, told him about the facility, the men. Liam's face turned pale. Ellie, this is bigger than us. They're hiding something, and Ghost knows where the rest is. He remembers everything. He swallowed. We need help. No cops, not yet. I need someone I can trust. Who? She didn't hesitate. Deputy Marcus. Deputy Marcus was a mountain of a man with gentle eyes and a habit of showing up at the town diner right before closing. That's where Ellie found him, stirring sugar into his coffee and flipping through a police notebook. She walked right up to his booth. Hi. He looked up. Ellie Martin, shouldn't you be in bed? She sat down, pulled out the badge, and slid it across the table. He stared at it, then at her. Where'd you get this? I can't tell you that. Ellie. She looked him dead in the eye. If I tell you, you have to promise Ghost stays safe. He blinked. Ghost. He's alive. He saw everything. And I think he knows where Officer Tyler is. The diner went silent around them. Deputy Marcus leaned in. You're going to tell me everything. That night, Ellie cried for the first time in days. Not out of fear, but relief. Someone believed her. She curled up beside Ghost in the barn, hugging his neck, whispering promises. They're going to try to take you, you know. Ghost huffed. I won't let them. You're my dog now, no matter what. He pressed his head into her chest. The barn creaked, the wind outside howled. But inside, two souls rested, both marked by something terrible, both stitched together by something even stronger. Trust. The wind had shifted that morning. Not much, just enough to rattle the windows of Ellie's room and scatter dust through the cracks of the barn's wooden siding. But Ellie felt it, like something in the world was about to change. Ghost was pacing. That alone was strange. For days, the injured K9 had only walked short distances, slow, cautious, always favoring his front leg. But now he was moving in slow, tight circles in the loft, his tail twitching, low ears half pinned back. Are you okay, boy? Ellie whispered. Ghost didn't look at her. His nose was working the floor. Then he paused. His body stiffened. And that's when it happened. The growl. But it wasn't the growl of fear or warning. It was the growl of remembering, deep in his throat, as if some old memory had been shaken loose. Then he turned to her locked eyes and bolted down the ramp. Ghost, she called, nearly tripping over a feed bag as she chased him outside. But he wasn't running away. He was running towards something. Ellie followed as fast as she could, grabbing her backpack on the way. Ghost darted through the fence across the field and toward the old water tower near the edge of town. That's where they stopped. He sat in front of a rusted metal panel, breathing hard. Then he looked up at her. What is this? She crouched next to him. The base of the tower was surrounded by dry grass and concrete, except this panel. It was scorched. Faint black marks arced across it like an old explosion had once burst nearby. Ellie reached out and brushed dirt away from the surface. There, just visible beneath rust and grime, was a faint stamp. Unit 76, Emergency Storage. Ghost pawed at the corner. Something inside this old tower was calling him. Ellie told Deputy Marcus everything that afternoon. The badge, the strange men at the water plant. Now this Ghost's reaction to the tower. He listened without interruption. Then he opened a file. This is Officer Tyler James Marcus, said quietly. He went missing 3 weeks ago during a federal joint operation just west of here. K9 attached. They said neither were recovered. Ellie swallowed hard. I think Ghost is his dog. I think so too. He looked at her serious now. There's something you should know. There's been a lot of quiet noise agents showing up off the record. People asking questions but not filing reports. Ghost didn't just survive something. He escaped something. Ellie's breath caught. What do? We follow the dog. That night, Ellie dreamed of helicopters, of flashing lights, of Ghost barking and dragging her by the wrist as shadows chased them through desert tunnels. When she woke, the barn was cold. Ghost sat near the door, staring out at the field, motionless. And in his eyes was that same faraway look, like he was still inside the dream too. Later that morning, Emily Dawson arrived. She was tall, calm, with a badge that wasn't from town. Deputy Marcus introduced her as a friend from Homeland Security. Ellie didn't like her. Not right away. Emily smiled too easily, talked like everything was normal, until she saw Ghost. Then her whole face changed. Good God, she murmured. Is that Tango 12? Ellie blinked. What? Emily knelt slowly, letting Ghost sniff her hand. I worked in tech support for a federal K-9 program. That's Tango 12. Last seen in Yuma Ridge. His partner, Officer Tyler, never came back. Ghost didn't growl, but he didn't lean in either. He simply sat, watching her. Emily showed Ellie the file. Ghost had been trained in advanced location recall, meaning he could lead investigators back to where an incident occurred, days or even weeks later, based on sensory triggers. His memory, Emily said, is his greatest weapon. Ellie looked at Ghost. He looked back at her, and something inside her clicked. With Marcus and Emily following in an unmarked SUV, Ellie led Ghost back to the water tower. She knew every step by now, every rock, every path the dog took. But this time he didn't stop at the tower. He kept going, down a rocky slope, through a thicket of mesquite, and straight to a small, half-buried hatch in the earth. There was no label, no lock, just a dented handle and concrete steps disappearing into darkness. Ghost growled once, then sat, like he was waiting for them to open it. Inside it smelled of dust oil and something rotting. Emily clicked on her flashlight. The beam landed on a metal table, overturned crates, and dried blood across the floor. But in the far corner, barely visible, was a pile of rags and a leg. Ellie gasped. Deputy Marcus ran ahead. Tyler James. Alive. Barely. Tied at the wrist, face, bruised lips, cracked. Ghost barked once, sharp and loud. Tyler stirred. His eyes opened. He blinked. Ghost, he rasped. The dog rushed forward, whimpering now, tail wagging as best it could. He licked Tyler's face over and over. And Tyler, he smiled, tears in his eyes. You found me, he whispered. Then he passed out. They carried Tyler out, radioed for medical evac. Ghost never left his side. Even as the chopper arrived and agents swarmed in, even as Emily tried to lead him away, Ghost refused to move until Tyler's stretcher was secure. Only then did he sit beside Ellie, head resting against her leg. On the ride back, Ellie didn't speak. She stared out the window. The desert looked different now. Not smaller, but clearer. Like every rock and ridge held secrets waiting to be remembered. She turned to Marcus. Are they going to be okay? Tyler's tough, he said. He's a fighter. And Ghost. Marcus looked in the rearview mirror. Ghost was asleep now, peaceful. I think he just found his way home. That night, Ellie sat on her porch, knees pulled to her chest, Ghost beside her. The stars blinked above. I guess you were never really mine, huh, she whispered. Ghost looked at her and leaned in, pressed his forehead to her shoulder, like saying, I'm yours too. And in that moment, Ellie knew something that no one had said out loud yet. The story wasn't over. Because Ghost had only started remembering, and whatever he remembered next could change everything. 3 days had passed since they found Officer Tyler James. He was alive, but just barely. Still in intensive care at Yuma Regional, heavily sedated his body, recovering from dehydration infection and multiple fractures. The doctors said it was a miracle he survived. Ellie had been there when they wheeled him into the emergency unit. Ghost had refused to leave the ambulance even when they tried to close the doors. They had to lift him out gently. He waited all night outside the hospital window, laying in the gravel like a silent sentry. And now, Ghost was different. Something inside him had shifted. He was eating again, walking steadily. But his eyes, they never rested. Always scanning, always listening. And every night since the rescue, he'd wake up around 3 a.m., bolt upright, and stare toward the north window of the barn. Not growling, just watching. As if something was coming, and Ellie believed him. Deputy Marcus showed up that morning with bad news. Tyler's still unconscious. But the people who left him in that bunker, they're not done. Ellie sat on the porch swing, Ghost at her feet. What do you mean? Marcus handed her a printout, a satellite image. That hatch Ghost led us to. It's not on any map, no military records, no water department claims, which means someone buried it without permission. Ellie frowned. Why? To hide something? Marcus hesitated. There's chatter from state-level law enforcement. Someone's trying to erase what happened out there, delete video logs, scrub reports, and now, Ghost is a liability. Ellie stared down at her dog. He's not a liability. To them, he is. He saw something. That evening, Ellie sat with Liam in his garage. He'd managed to recover some corrupted data from the SD card they'd pulled from Ghost's collar. It's messy, Liam said, but there's one file that wasn't completely wiped. He clicked play. The screen flashed grainy and jumpy. Then movement, a forested ridge, gunfire, a man yelling orders. And then, a crate. Not a normal crate. This one was bolted shut with reinforced steel and stenciled with the words BIO 11 do not open. The timestamp read 3:42 a.m., the same day Tyler went missing. The camera swung as the dog wearing it lunged forward. Voices screaming, "No, don't let it out!" Static. Then the image froze on a frame one Ellie would never forget. A tall man in a dark gray coat holding a device in one hand. No badge. No ID. Just a black insignia stitched into the collar. Liam zoomed in. The triangle symbol. Same as the van in the first footage. They looked at each other. "What was in that crate?" Ellie whispered. Liam didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, the barn was quieter than usual. Ghost was curled up in his hay nest, twitching in his sleep. Ellie sat beside him, flashlight in her lap, unable to close her eyes. Her head swirled with questions. What if Ghost remembered more? What if the men in gray were still nearby? What if Tyler never woke up? And what if they came for Ghost? She leaned over and whispered, "If they try to take you, I'll bite them first." Ghost's tail thumped once in the straw. She smiled, but the moment didn't last, because that's when she heard it. A click, not inside the barn, but outside. Metal on metal, followed by soft, crunching footsteps on dry grass. Ellie's blood froze. She grabbed the flashlight, killed it instantly, and crouched low behind the stacked feed bags. Ghost was already on his feet, silent, ears up, body rigid. Then a beam of light cut across the barn window. Someone was out there. She texted Liam, "Someone's here, barn, come now." Seconds later, Liam OMW, calling Marcus, "Stay down." Ghost crept to the side door, his body coiled like a spring. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just waited. Another click, this time closer. The barn door creaked open. A shadow entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving slow. Ellie held her breath. Ghost lunged. A blur of fur and muscle collided with the intruder, knocking him backward into the dirt. A scream male panicked. Another figure ran into view, this one with a long black flashlight and something holstered on his hip. Ellie jumped up. Ghost back. The dog stopped mid-charge and circled protectively in front of her. The two men scrambled up. But before they could run, red and blue lights lit up the horizon. Sirens, tires crunching gravel, flashlights flooding the barn from the side road. Deputy Marcus's voice boomed. "Drop everything, hands in the air." The two intruders froze. Agents tackled them within seconds. One of them, the taller one, was the man from the video still. Gray coat, triangle insignia. The aftermath felt like a movie. Deputy Marcus, 3 officers, and 2 federal agents stayed in the barn until sunrise, collecting evidence, asking questions, scanning Ghost for hidden trackers. Ellie sat on the back of Marcus's cruiser, wrapped in a blanket, watching Ghost rest with one paw over her shoe. Emily Dawson showed up again just before dawn this time, with a government dog handler in a sealed black case. She knelt beside Ghost. "You really are Tango 12, she whispered. "You weren't supposed to survive." Ellie tensed. "He did." Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, and now we need to know everything he remembers." At the sheriff's office later that morning, Ellie was shown a lineup of photos. Ghost sat beside her. When they reached the photo of the man in the gray coat, Ghost let out a sharp bark. Twice. Marcus looked at the agents in the room. "That's confirmation. He remembers him." Ellie crossed her arms. "Now what?" Emily closed the folder. "Now we make sure Ghost tells the rest of the story." Ellie wasn't sure what that meant until Ghost was invited to debrief. In a special facility outside town, dog behaviorists used command prompts, sensory recall, and familiar sense to guide Ghost through what he remembered. And what he revealed stunned everyone. He led them to a second buried hatch north of the old riverbed, where another crate had been. This one was gone now. But not before Ghost pointed to something else. A buried cache of equipment, high-tech tracking devices, stun weapons, and a file folder sealed in plastic, marked Project Horizon. Marcus took one look and muttered, "This isn't just a dog case anymore." Back at the barn, Ellie and Ghost sat beneath the rafters, watching the shadows shift with the sun. "They're gonna ask you for more, aren't they?" she asked softly. Ghost placed his head in her lap. "I'll go with you," she promised. Then, almost as if he understood every word, Ghost gently licked her hand and closed his eyes. But Ellie didn't, because for the first time since she found him bleeding in that ditch, she was starting to worry this story had no happy ending. At least not yet. It was almost midnight when the power went out. No warning, no storm, just a hard snap and then silence. Ellie's room, lit only by her lava lamp, flickered and died. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. Outside, the wind had stopped. Even the crickets had gone quiet. Ghost, who always slept curled up at the foot of her bed, was already standing. Head low, hackles raised. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Earlier that day, everything had felt normal. Sort of. Ghost had spent the afternoon with the behavioral team from Flagstaff running scent tests and reaction drills. They were trying to help him piece together what had happened in the canyon. Ellie had watched through the glass window as Ghost froze near a crate lined with aluminum and wire. He growled. The same growl she remembered from the first night in the barn. And then he'd done something no one expected. He dragged the crate across the floor until it tipped over. Underneath it, a symbol. That same triangle, except this time it was stamped with 2 letters. H-U-R. Emily had taken one look and left the room, speaking urgently into her phone. Ellie had asked Marcus what it meant. He hesitated, then said it might be the name of the project, or the initials of someone high up. Either way, it's bad. Now, hours later, the barn was in darkness, and Ghost was no longer calm. He paced the hallway outside Ellie's room, then ran to the front door, barked once sharp and clipped, and returned to her. She followed him, heart hammering. There were no lights in the street. The neighbors' windows were dark. Only the moon lit the gravel path that led to the barn. And in the middle of it, a van. Black, no markings, no headlights. Just sitting there. Still, she backed away from the window and grabbed her phone. No signal. Liam, she whispered, trying to call anyway. Please answer. Nothing. Ghost let out a low, urgent whine. She reached for her sneakers, still shaking. I'm not leaving you, boy. He pressed his head to her leg. Then slowly he walked to the back door, the one that opened toward the dried-out canal behind their house. He looked back at her. They had to go. Now, she grabbed her backpack, the one she'd pre-packed 2 days ago after the barn incident. Flashlight, snacks, water bottle, dog, treats, a USB drive with the footage from the SD card, and a photo of her and Ghost. She opened the door. Ghost slipped out first. They moved fast and low, cutting across the canal and up toward the old orchard. Behind them, the front door creaked. Ellie turned for just a second, just long enough to see the silhouette of someone entering her house. Her bedroom light flicked on for a moment, then off. They were inside. They ran. Ellie's legs burned her breath short. But Ghost never slowed. He led her through the orchard, past the rusted-out tractor, until they reached the McAllister silo, an old steel tower half crushed by time. They climbed inside and waited. Ellie pressed her back to the cool metal wall, trying to control her breathing. Ghost stood at the doorway, ears twitching. A minute passed, then another. Then footsteps. Fast, crunching over gravel. Ghost growled. Ellie grabbed a rock, ready to defend him with everything she had. But it wasn't a stranger. It was Liam. Out of breath, phone in one hand, flashlight in the other. I got your message, he gasped. Marcus is on his way. We have to get to the station. Now. They loaded Ghost into the back of Liam's truck and tore through the hill's tires, kicking up dust behind them. When they pulled up to the sheriff's department, there were already 3 police cruisers parked out front, lights flashing. Emily Dawson was pacing by the entrance, talking fast into her earpiece. She saw Ellie and ran over. Are you okay? They were in my house, Ellie said, her voice shaking. They came for Ghost. Emily's jaw tightened. We were afraid this might happen. Ellie blinked. You knew. Not for sure, Emily said. But when Ghost identified the HR crate, I made some calls. There are rumors about off-the-books experiments. Someone wanted Ghost gone before he could reveal more. Inside, they reviewed security footage. 3 men, black tactical clothing, no visible weapons. They had entered Ellie's house, searched it for 10 minutes, and left with nothing. No prints, no plates. Ghost sat beside the screen watching the footage. Then suddenly he stood, walked to the back wall, and barked. 4 times. Short, sharp. Emily turned. That's a signal. What kind of signal? Ellie asked. He's identifying someone. Ghost barked again. Emily flipped open her laptop, brought up personnel photos from the facility Ghost had escaped. After the 3rd row, Ghost barked once. Hard. The man had a name. Dr. Hudson Reed. Initials HR. Emily leaned back slowly. That's who trained him. And possibly who ordered Tyler's team into that canyon. Ellie felt her stomach twist. Is he still out there? Last known location was Seattle, but now could be anywhere. Marcus spoke up. This changes everything. We can issue a national alert. Put Ghost in protective custody. Ellie's eyes widened. No, you're not taking him. Ellie, he's not a piece of evidence. He's my dog. Ghost leaned into her tail, wagging once. Emily sighed. She's not wrong, but this has to be handled carefully. The people behind this, they're not just scientists. They're military contractors, which means Ghost may be the only living witness. They made a decision. Ellie, Liam, and Ghost would stay at a secure ranch outside Flagstaff under temporary protection. They'd continue working with the K-9 trauma team, helping Ghost remember what happened. And when Tyler woke up, if he woke up, he could confirm everything. Until then, the footage, the crate, and Ghost's identification of Dr. Reed would have to be enough. As they prepared to leave, Ellie turned to Emily. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Emily hesitated. "Because I thought Ghost was just another broken dog." Ellie shook her head. "He's not broken." Emily gave a small smile. "I know that now." In the truck that night, Ellie sat in the back seat with Ghost's head on her lap, the Arizona desert stretching endlessly beyond the window. She whispered into his ear, "I'll keep you safe, no matter what." Ghost closed his eyes. But just before sleep, he raised his head once more and stared out the window, toward the road behind them, because deep down he remembered. The night they came back was just the beginning. The safe house wasn't a cabin, it was a compound. High fences, surveillance cameras, retired Border Patrol dogs pacing in distant enclosures. Ellie had never seen anything like it. She and Liam were given a modest suite above the training barn, complete with 2 beds, a kitchenette, and a direct line to Deputy Marcus. And Ghost. He was assigned a trauma specialist named Dana Cole, an ex-K-9 handler who spoke to him like he was human. Some days, Ghost wouldn't respond. Other days, he'd follow Donna through agility courses and memory drills like he was back in the force. But something was changing. The closer they got to understanding what had happened to Tyler, the darker Ghost's memories became. On day 5, Dana introduced a new scent, trigger blood. Not fresh blood, but the dried kind, like what had soaked Ghost's vest the day Ellie found him. Ghost froze. Then he ran. Not away, but straight across the yard, barking twice, then 3 times. Then once his version of a code. He led Dana to a covered drainage trench behind the barn. There, under a rusted panel, was a buried crate, smaller than the others, sealed with wax tape. Inside it, a phone, a journal, and a silver badge bent, blood-stained but unmistakable. Officer Tyler James. Dana opened the journal. On the last page was a message scrawled in shaky, bleeding pen. "Ghost, I pray you make it out. If not for me, for them. Reed's not done." Tyler had known. He hadn't just been attacked, he'd been betrayed. And now, thanks to Ghost, they had a chain of evidence. That night, Marcus arrived with a federal warrant. "I'm heading to Seattle," he told Ellie. "We've confirmed Dr. Hudson Reed is using a biotech front to hide the project. Ghost's collar footage, the journal, and his reaction under cognitive recall. It's enough to move." Ellie stood on the porch beside Ghost. "Are you going to arrest him?" "If we can find him," Marcus said. "And if not, at least expose him." Ellie knelt beside Ghost. "You did it," she whispered. "You remembered." But Ghost wasn't relaxed. He was staring east toward the canyon. He barked once. Soft, questioning, like the story wasn't over. "Not yet." 3 days later, Marcus called. "They found Tyler," he said. "He woke up." Ellie's breath caught. "He's alive. He's weak, but he's talking." And he asked for Ghost. They flew out that evening, Ellie, Ghost, Liam, and Dana. When they reached the hospital, the room was quiet. A nurse gently opened the door. Tyler was there, tubes in his arms, oxygen clipped to his nose. His eyes opened the moment he heard the soft jingle of Ghost's collar. And when he saw Ellie, he smiled. "You," he whispered. "You found him." Ghost padded to the bed. Tyler opened one hand, trembling. Ghost placed his paw into it. They didn't need words. The bond between them, broken by trauma, was whole again. Tyler spoke slowly but clearly. He told the full story, how his unit was sent into the canyon on what was described as a high-alert rescue drill. How Dr. Reed accompanied them with a new device designed to test K-9 fear thresholds. How things went wrong. How a real threat, something they hadn't trained for, was released. And how one by one his team vanished. "They used us," he said. "Ghost was the only one who refused to follow. He broke protocol to save me." Ellie was crying by then. Ghost nuzzled Tyler's chest. And Dana, standing beside them, nodded solemnly. "We'll make sure it all comes out." And it did. Within 2 weeks, the story hit national media. K-9 hero exposes secret program, child saves dog, dog saves officer. CNN, CBS, and even NPR picked it up. A press conference was held in Flagstaff, where Deputy Marcus and Agent Emily Dawson laid out the evidence, Ghost footage, Tyler's journal, Ellie's testimony, and the ID of Dr. Reed. An arrest warrant was issued. Dr. Reed's operation was shut down, but Reed himself gone. Disappeared. No credit card trail, no flight logs. The hunt would continue. But Ghost's job was done. At the end of that month, the town of Ehrenberg held a special ceremony. Ellie was presented with a Community Bravery Award. Tyler, still in a wheelchair, stood beside her and spoke. She found him when we couldn't. She believed when no one else would. And this dog, he looked at Ghost, wasn't just a K9. He was my partner, my protector, my only witness. And now, he's her family. Ellie stepped to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd of neighbors, friends, law enforcement reporters, and kids in the front row. And she said, "I didn't save him. I just listened." Ghost knew something was wrong. All I did was follow his lead. So if you ever find a voice that's barking at something nobody sees, maybe listen before you shut it out. The crowd applauded. Ghost wagged his tail. A year later, a bronze statue was unveiled outside the sheriff's office. It showed a girl no more than 8 standing beside a tall German shepherd. The plaque read, "To those who listen." Ghost now lived full-time with Ellie and her family. His days of missions were over, but he still had a job visiting schools, comforting other officers with PTSD, and walking beside Ellie everywhere she went. They were never apart. People still asked about Dr. Reed, about what the government was hiding. And Ellie always said the same thing. Ask Ghost, he remembers everything. But late at night when Ellie couldn't sleep, she'd sometimes find Ghost sitting by the back window, ears twitching, watching the stars, waiting, like he still had one more mission left in him, maybe someday. But for now, he was home, safe, so and finally at peace. Thank you for following the story of Ellie and Ghost. Their bond reminds us that courage doesn't always come in uniforms, and that sometimes the smallest voices are the ones that save us all. What would you have done if you found a wounded K9 in the woods? Would you keep the secret or follow the mystery? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more true and emotional animal rescue stories. Winter came early to Ehrenberg that year. The first frost touched the ground in early November, casting silvery threads along the edge of the old barn where Ghost had once laid dying. The same barn now had a hand-painted sign, Ghost Place K9 Rescue and Learning Center. It was Ellie's idea, and no one had the heart to say no. Since the investigation, Ellie and Ghost had become something of legends in town. Schools invited them to assemblies. Newspapers ran headlines like, "The girl who followed the bark, K9 breaks silence, leads to justice. 8-year-old outsmarts a federal cover-up." At first it overwhelmed her, but over time Ellie grew into her voice. So did Ghost. Now fully recovered, he took to his new role with pride. He wasn't chasing criminals anymore, he was helping kids. Kids like Jessie, who refused to speak after surviving a car crash. Or Camilla, who had nightmares so bad she couldn't sleep through the night. Ghost would lie beside them, patient and still. No barking, no demands, just presence. And somehow it was enough. Ellie's mom, Amy, began volunteering at the rescue center every afternoon. Her dad, who used to work nights at the gas station, switched jobs so he could help build fences and train the newer dogs. It wasn't just a center, it was a second chance for everyone. One afternoon, while sorting through donated toys and gear, Ellie found something tucked in a battered box, a K9 patch, faded and frayed, with one word still clear: loyal. She held it up to the light, her breath catching. Ghost walked over and pressed his head into her shoulder. "I think it belonged to one of the other dogs," she whispered. "The ones who didn't make it." Ghost didn't bark, he just stayed with her silent. But the peace wouldn't last forever. One morning, Ellie received a letter, no return address. Inside a single photograph, old, blurry, but unmistakable. It showed Ghost in uniform next to a tall man in black fatigues. And on the back, written in shaky handwriting, "Not over, stay ready, HR." She showed it to Marcus and Emily that same day. Marcus shook his head. Could be a prank. Could be someone from the program stirring fear. Emily studied the photo longer. "No," she said. "This was printed on military-grade thermal paper. Only a few labs have access to that kind of tech." "So what do we do?" Ellie asked. Emily looked from her to Ghost. "You stay alert, but you live." Ellie took that advice to heart. She didn't live in fear. Instead, she started writing. At first, it was little things, her version of how she found Ghost, or drawings of the barn when it was still cold and broken. Then it became more. A children's book, The Dog Who Barked at the Wind. She published it with her dad's help and raised enough money to expand the rescue center by 3 acres. Every copy had this dedication: for the animals who remember and the children who believe them. Meanwhile, Ghost kept watching the fence line every evening. Sometimes he'd bark at nothing. Sometimes he'd sit quietly under the maple tree and stare toward the highway. One night, Ellie joined him with a blanket and hot cocoa. "You think he's still out there, don't you?" she asked. Ghost didn't move. But Ellie knew. She felt it too. Some stories weren't over. They just paused. waiting for the right time to return. A week before Christmas, a school bus from Flagstaff pulled into the center. 25 kids poured out wide-eyed and shivering, escorted by teachers and social workers. They'd come from a trauma counseling program. Each of them had experienced something terrible: fires, loss, abuse. Ellie stood with Ghost at the entrance. "Ghost isn't here to bark," she told the group gently. "He's here to listen." The kids didn't say much, but one boy, maybe 9, with a cast on his arm and bruises under his sleeves, stepped forward. Ghost walked to him, stared, then sat. The boy smiled for the first time all year. Later that night, Ellie wrote in her journal, "Maybe that's what healing is. Not fixing everything, just walking beside the hurt, quietly, steadily, like Ghost." News of the center spread far beyond Arizona. A TV crew from Los Angeles came to film a short documentary. Ellie didn't want to talk on camera, but Ghost didn't mind being followed. The footage of him comforting a child in tears went viral overnight. That weekend, hundreds of donations poured in. $5, $20, one check for $10,000 from an anonymous donor signed only for the silent ones. And then it happened. A call from New Mexico. A woman named Nora had found a microchipped German Shepherd in a ditch near Alamogordo. When scanned, the chip said property of Project HR. The dog was barely alive. They named her Ember, and she was afraid of everything, except the sound of Ellie's voice. Ghost sat beside Ember that first night, as if remembering something he couldn't quite explain. Ellie placed a hand on each of them. "I think we found another piece," she whispered. Ghost didn't bark, but he wagged his tail slowly, softly, as if to say, "We keep going." That spring, Ellie was invited to speak at the National Canine Memorial in Washington, D.C. She stood on a stage surrounded by officers and their dogs, looking out at the vast white pillars and waving flags. She said, "Not all heroes wear vests. Some wear scars. And sometimes the ones who are supposed to follow orders are the ones who choose to do what's right instead." Ghost barked once like a stamp at the end of a sentence. The crowd erupted in applause. Back home, Ellie planted a new maple tree beside the old one. She hung a small plaque on the trunk that read, "In memory of the ones we never got to thank." She and Ghost sat under its shade often, sometimes with kids, sometimes alone, but always together. Because in a world that often forgets to listen, one girl and one dog still remembered that the truth has a heartbeat, and it always finds its way back home. Thank you for being part of this journey. What would you name a K9 who saved you from a secret no one believed? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more powerful stories of loyalty, courage, and healing. They always said the wind carried stories, and that some dogs, just a few, could still hear them. Ghost was one of those dogs. But now he was tired. It had been 3 years since Ellie first found him beneath that broken beam in the barn. Since then, they had built something bigger than either of them had ever imagined: a sanctuary, a rescue network, a movement. Dozens of K9s now lived at Ghost Place, retired, injured, or in training to become emotional support companions. And Ghost wanted a shorting Washington. He had become more than just a dog. He was a legend. But legends grow old too. His steps had slowed. His eyes clouded in one. The cold bothered him more than it used to. Still, he refused to leave Ellie's side, not when Ember had her first pup, not when Tyler returned for therapy sessions, not even when the mayor asked Ghost to serve as honorary town guardian. He barked less now, but he watched everything with quiet wisdom. One October morning, Ellie found him lying under the new maple tree, the one planted in memory of the forgotten dogs. He was awake but still, listening. The wind rustled the leaves, gently scattering orange and gold across the grass. She sat beside him, brushing her fingers through his fur. "Thinking again," she whispered. Ghost blinked. She smiled sadly. "Yeah, me too." That week, Ellie received an unexpected letter from a federal archive department. Inside was a case file, heavily redacted with one line circled in blue ink. Subject Tango 12 exhibited sustained behavior in violation of program thresholds. Subject chose protection over protocol. Below that, final disposition project shuttered, remaining assets terminated. Except Ghost wasn't terminated, because Ghost had refused to obey. He chose love over orders, and somehow that had saved him, and saved them all. A ceremony was held that weekend in Ghost's honor. Not a funeral, he was still alive. More like a living tribute. Families came from as far as Denver and El Paso. Kids brought thank you cards. Officers laid medals beside his plaque. A choir of school children sang a song titled, "The Dog Who Remembered." Ellie tried to speak, but her voice cracked halfway through. So she knelt beside Ghost and let him speak instead, with a single tail wag, a low sigh, and a soft, knowing gaze that made grown men cry. That night, Ellie sat beside him again, beneath the maple tree. Stars blinked into the Arizona sky. "Hey, Ghost," she whispered. He looked at her. "When you're gone, do you think I'll remember everything?" He licked her hand, and then slowly leaned his head against her chest, like he was saying, "Yes, you already do." The next morning, Ghost didn't wake up. There was no pain, no sound, just stillness. The kind that comes when something true has finished its purpose. Ellie didn't cry right away. She sat there stroking his fur, letting the sunlight spill across them like one last goodbye from the earth itself. Then quietly she whispered, "Thank you." The funeral drew over 500 people. Veterans, children, dogs from every agency. A military honor team folded a flag with Ghost's paw print printed across the corner. They played taps, laid his vest on a pedestal surrounded by wildflowers. And in the sky, 2 birds circled overhead, free and high. Ellie wore the K9 patch Ghost had saved and read aloud from her journal. He remembered what they wanted him to forget. He loved when they told him not to. He stayed when others ran. He was never just a dog. He was memory, and memory is forever. Months passed, but Ghost Place grew. A new training wing was built named the 12 Room in honor of Tango 12. Tyler returned full-time to teach behavioral classes. Ellie, now 12, became a published author with 2 more books and the first ever child appointed to the K9 honor board. One spring morning, a new puppy arrived. All black, sharp ears, eyes too smart for his size. Ellie knelt in front of him. "What's your name?" she whispered. He licked her chin. She smiled. "I think we'll call you Echo." Ghost would have approved. People still ask about Ghost. Some say his story was just a coincidence. Others believe in destiny. But everyone agrees on one thing. That girl and that dog changed everything. And if you ever visit Ehrenberg and walk past the old barn at sunset, you might hear it. A soft bark in the distance. The wind carrying something more than just dust. A memory. A thank you. A reminder that even in silence, some voices never fade. Thank you for walking this journey with us. From a forgotten barn to a national spotlight, Ellie and Ghost prove that one act of love can echo across years and lives. If Ghost could hear you now, what would you say to him? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals to keep Ghost's legacy alive, one story at a time.